the people that he had basically taken money and funds from. And so I think when we look at, our life today, that we can be excited by what we do and people we come in contact with, but we need to always remember that we need to treat other people the same as we would want to be treated. Okay, Jody, would you like to have some music for us and kind of an interlude to everything else that's going on? We're going to have music or words up here, but you really can't sing out loud, but you can sing to yourself. So we know, we would just kind of get some music in our heart going today. Thank you, Jody. Well, it's time now for intercessory prayer. And if we can just bow our heads. Lord, in the last hymn we sang, it said, "Turn our eyes upon you, Jesus." And that's what we need to do. We all need to look forward and look to you for the challenges that we all face in our lives every day. We ask that you would be with us, help us through those days, help us through those challenges, and that we can just keep our focus on you, keep our eyes on you, Lord. I pray, Lord, that you would watch over our church family, be with those that are ill and not feeling well, those that may be at home, not able to get out, that you'd watch over them, give them a supporting hand and an arm around their shoulder and a comfort for helping them through their challenging times. Be with the family of Marian Evenson, Lord, with her passing. Give them strength and comfort, and to know that you're there for them and to support them in this, challenging time and the grief that they're going through. Watch over them and give them support. Lord, I lift up to you Sky also, and his anxiety and the anxiousness that he's facing with, what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. But be with the doctors and the team that will be working on him to help him through this, surgical procedure as he, has this, planned out in the next few, weeks. Give him the courage and the strength, and also to be with Amy, give her peace with all this that's going on. And Lord, I thank you for our church family, for all those that have, been here or here at our church today, and the support that they're given by showing up and being a part of our, church family. Be with those that are watching online, to give them the comfort, from this sermon and the service today also. Lord, I lift up to you our, state and our community and all the government, things that we're challenged with right now, from the fires that have been going on, and the loss that we've had with the, forest fires on the west side, and the towns people that have lost everything. But I praise you and thank you for the respite that we've gotten from the smoke today, that we can see the blue skies and the clouds, and that life is getting back to normal again. I pray, Lord, that you'll watch over our church school and our little friends, watch over the teachers, the classes, and the parents that have, entrusted, to our teachers their children, that we can be a light in the community for these individuals and these children, and they can get a better understanding of the love that you have, through our teachers in their school. And Lord, please watch over and keep our finances safe as we continue to, work on keeping things open and getting our finances and our debts under control with the school and little friends. Lord, please be with, our pastor search. We had a good meeting last week with the conference officials, and I pray, Lord, that as we discussed, that you already probably have a person picked out, for our church. It's just now, Lord, are we ready to, for this new individual to be here? But as the conference goes through and does the search, that the right candidate, the right person will, be presented to us in due time, and that we can, be able to get our church back on track with having our administrative leader, our shepherd, in the form of a new pastor and his family, or whatever Lord, our needs are, that you'll bring the right person to us. Be with us today, Lord, as Bill brings a message to us, and that the words he says will be able to have a lasting impact on our lives, and that we can be something we can share with others in this coming week. May his words be your words, Lord. Lord, I ask this in your name. Amen. All right, Bill, I think you're on.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Go back over that way. How's that look? Looks better? Well, I sound a little bit louder over here. Usually I don't have much trouble as I'm making the mic, I don't have much trouble in projecting my voice. When I was in college, many years ago, I took a class. It was called speech. Anybody here taking a speech class in college? Did you love it? I loved it. I got my first and only A+ in college. And that may be kind of hard to believe, but it's what happened to me. I found a group of people who enjoyed the way I communicated to them. So the communication that I did was always humorous. The one particular speech that I gave at the end of my speech class was why not to go to Magic Mountain and why you shouldn't ever want to. And that speech, if anybody, who's been to Magic Mountain, by the way? A couple of people have. Magic Mountain was a park designed for kids who like to do rides that make you sick. And there was very little places to eat. And I had a lot of fun with that speech. And what I did and how I communicated to that class, I always had everybody laughing, and it made me feel good. Communication is a vital, important part. If we miss something in communication, then we feel like we've done something wrong or that the situation didn't go correctly. But there are many types of communications that are good. What's our communication that we start our day out with? Prayer. Exactly. On our knees in prayer with a communication with our Heavenly Father. It's a heart-to-heart prayer. It's a prayer that tells Him how much we love to be part of His family. We're His children. There's loving communication. I have a wife, I have a son, and other family members who I communicate with, my daughters, my grandchildren. And if I didn't do it with a loving communication, then it would be a very sad situation. There are 4 different types of loves that are mentioned in the book by C.S. Lewis. Can anybody tell me what they are? There's that, philia, storge. There's eros, and what's the last one? Agape. Those 4 loves are the most important things. And when we're communicating with people in those areas, it's very important that we do things that affiliate ourselves with those particular 4 loves. So how do we communicate to people with those 4 loves in mind? Do we speak clearly? I know it's hard for me to talk through a mask, and this particular one is. The paper masks are a whole lot thinner, but they seem to be a whole lot better. Do we choose our words carefully? And by choosing our words carefully, I put that in my notes, and lo and behold, I had prayer on Thursday morning with some of the most loving people that are in this church. And I am honored to do that. But after I got through with that prayer, I went to work, and there was a situation where I wasn't doing something quite fast enough. And someone said, please get that bed in here. And I looked at that person and said, I'm working on it. What communication did I give that person? Was it friendship? Negative. It was negative communication. It made me feel awful. I sat there and took care of my patient and went downstairs with a lump in my stomach because I had communicated inappropriately with that person. So I asked my friend who was there in the room at the same time. I said, I need to go apologize. Oh, Bill, don't worry about it. She deserved it. What kind of communication is that? Where are we going in a situation where we can actually take a negative message of anger and frustration, deliver it to another person, and have someone agree with you that that's perfectly okay? I couldn't do it. So I went back in. I found this person and apologized to them. And she said, thank you so much. I'm trying to figure out what I did. And she said, oh, and by the way, it wasn't me who asked you to get the bed in here. It was somebody else. So I directed my negative anger towards the wrong person. And so that person then felt like, well, what did I do to him? Have any of us ever done that, or is it just me? Don't raise your hands, that's fine. Okay, there are other forms of communication that seem to be confusing to me. But when I walk into the room and I see my son and I talk to him, but I don't do it with the right facial expression, or if I say, Jacob, what are you doing over there? What do you mean, Dad? I'm over here. Oh, Jacob, you're over there. What are you doing over there? It's a facial expression and direction of my eyes. This morning he talked to me about one of his friends who doesn't look at him directly. And when he doesn't look at him directly, and by the way, I'm sorry I'm using that, but it was good. He doesn't understand that they're communicating with him or if they're communicating with a bird flying overhead. It's very important that as we communicate, that we keep our eyes focused on people. The communication styles also involve music and texting. How many of us are parents? Yes. How many of us have ever called our child on the phone and they don't answer the phone? But if you put a text through, you get a response in less than 10 seconds. So what happens to the communication? Is it breaking down? The communication does break down. Communication is divided into 3 different parts. 7% is words, 38% is tone of the voice, and 55% of communication is body language. People can tell what you are saying by your body language. If I had a bad body language right now, or if the tone of my voice was, I have to be here doing this, just get it over with, please. It doesn't help. It doesn't do anything for the communication that is breaking down. If we go back to the Bible and we take a look at Jonah, was there a communication breakdown there? Was God telling Jonah to go to Nineveh? But instead of Jonah going, he went someplace else. I don't know what God's saying. I'm just going to go someplace else. He'll never know where I'm at. Samson married Delilah. What a communication breakdown that was. What a horrible ending for him, even though we'll know that we get to see Samson in heaven. Moses had a communication breakdown. He had one with God. It was a very simple thing that no one ever picked up upon, because the people of Israel, or children of Israel, what they wanted water. And instead of speaking to the rock, he struck the rock because he was frustrated. The communication between he and God had left temporarily, so that he felt the frustration of the children of Israel on his shoulders. In reality, God was still in control. So why am I talking about communication? What's so important about communication? Well, I have a video I'm going to be showing this morning. And the communication that we hear from other people to us is important. If I were to tell Margie in a communication how to do her job at Nature's Pantry, do you think that would go over very well? Or is there a communication that is not there? If I were to look at Rusty and say, hey, Rusty, I got this PT down. It was in one of my chapters in nursing. I'm going to tell you how to do this, and this is what you're going to do when you get to work tomorrow, and it's going to go much better for you. Does he look at that with respect? Or if he had a physical therapist come and watch him one day and say, hey, I've got a way I can show you how you can do this better. If Keith were to get a communication from me and how to get along better with his brothers and sisters, and I don't live there, would it make any difference? Because I don't know what goes on between Keith and his brothers and sisters, other than the fact I love all of them. But when we look at the communication that happens in this video, it's a real person. A real person who has the same ideas that people of this world who think in a Christian spirit have towards other people. It makes a lot of difference, and it has a bigger impact. If you've been someplace and you've experienced it, and you can tell people about it to help focus them towards your love for God, then we have got a better form of communication, and the love of Jesus will come through. After I've played that, James played this video, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who the gentleman is who's going to be in it. And I looked him up and found out some fascinating things, and it warmed my heart. So, James, at this time we're going to go ahead and watch a short video. I'll step down, and then we will continue after that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't want to question the patriotism or the integrity of any of my colleagues who have spoken before me. That's not for me to do, just as it is not for them to do. We find ourselves doing it quite a bit in this body, and that's unfortunate because folks sent us here not to accuse each other of anything, but to do the job that they sent us to do. And told about them. I am one of those individuals who walked in back doors because the law said I had to. I'm one of those individuals who rode on the back of the bus on the back seats that were not cushioned because the law said I had to. I went to the water and drank colored water because the law said I had to. I went to a school where everybody looked like me and the country was divided and segregated because the law said that I had to. So all of these things we continue to refer to are the things that me and my generation lived. We saw it for ourselves. We're not reading it in the history books, but we lived it. I went with my father when he and our neighbor got one of those I am a man signs and went downtown Memphis and watched him stand there proudly with Dr. King and other men and women, black and white, who had enough courage to stand up against what was wrong. And the way they did it, they had on their suits, their shirts, their ties, their hats, and if it was cold, their overcoats. They locked arms and they marched peacefully. And Dr. King stood for that which was peaceful, because the world took a look at what was happening in Memphis, in Chicago, in Detroit, in Washington, D.C., and all over this country. We changed the entire world. And we changed it because those men and women had enough guts, integrity, enough citizenship and love of country, because my father was a Korean War era soldier, as many of those other men and women were. They didn't beg for anything. They didn't beg for citizenship. They demanded it, because they were American citizens who paid taxes, who raised children, who paid house notes and rent, and did everything they were supposed to do so that they could demand from this country and its Constitution those things that they were supposed to have. How did they do it? They did it by standing like men and women of integrity and class and common sense and values. When the riots started and folks started burning stuff down, that's when my father took my arm and we left. We left because that was not what we were there for. That was not what Dr. King was there for. That was not what others who are famous in the civil rights days were there for. This was not peaceful. It was not part of our movement, and it only hurt everything. That man lay in a pool of blood. I stood there and watched him make a speech. The building wasn't really full. It was crowded because there was a terrible storm that night. But my daddy was intending, and most certainly, he wanted to hear that speech and wanted me to be there. I gave my seat to a lady who came in wringing wet and stood over, not because there weren't any other seats, but because I could stand against the wall and be closer as he spoke. I watched that man shiver. I watched his voice shake. I watched him tremble, because he knew something. He knew that he probably wasn't going to leave Memphis. I don't know what providence God had given to make him prepare for this when he said he'd been to the mountaintop. I don't know what he was thinking when he said, I may not get there with you. But something told that good man on that terrible stormy night that something bad was getting ready to happen. Whenever we use the opportunity to do wrong, that policeman that put his foot on that man's neck was wrong, and every one of us in this room decry it. Every one of us in this room condemn it. We say it was wrong. And in America, we have a system of justice. A system of justice that's going to bring the full impact of the law down upon him. And I think every one of us in this room will support that. And we know that man lay there in a pool of blood. This man didn't die surrounded by his children and his wife. He died in a pool of blood from a coward's bullet. And he died on that day. And I remember as we went back to Memphis and all of the riots broke loose, everything he stood for was all of a sudden being torn down, until calmer voices came and said, Dr. King was against this. He was against this. He was against this. My family raised money and sent my dad to Washington for that march, where that man stood there and said that he wanted his children judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And all we do in America right now is talk about color. Every issue is about race, it's about color. Instead of us sitting down at the table like men and women of common sense and common justice, and understanding that our enemies are looking with a greedy vigilance upon us as we tear ourselves apart eternally. They have been watching us for 50 years, preparing step by step by step by step for us to kill ourselves. And I may not be back here next year. And I'm sure everything I say is going to be misconstrued and misquoted and used against me in November. Fine, because I stand for my father's legacy. I stand for the men and women who acted like they had some sense and some courage and changed this country by being men and women who stood for something. If we don't start standing for something, don't you know that the people who are looking at what's happening in Washington, in Detroit, in Portland, and Seattle, they're getting emboldened because we act like a bunch of punks, too frightened to stand up and protect our own stuff. You tell me that somebody got the right to tear down property that Tennessee taxpayers paid for? That American taxpayers paid for, and somebody has the right to destroy it, deface it, and tear it down? What kind of people have we become that we can't protect our own stuff? And when the heroes are those who violate the law, our police chief in Memphis, Tennessee, when they shut the bridge down between Memphis and Arkansas, our police chief walked up there because it was a peaceful protest, even though they had shut down that bridge. He walked up there, he talked to the protesters, he let them know that they had a right to protest, and after a while, he walked them all off the bridge. Because they conducted themselves properly, he conducted himself properly, and there was no one harmed on that evening. Peaceful protest ends peacefully. Anarchy ends in chaos. And what we see happening right now, any of us with any common sense whatsoever, know that what we see is not peaceful. So we can continue to fool ourselves and mix with words and use rhetoric and public relations in order to frost this stuff over and put a nice picture on what we see that is frightening. I have a nephew who is a policeman who talked about getting attacked the other night. You're telling me that somebody has the right to throw feces and urine in the face of those that we as taxpayers pay to protect us, and that's okay? What has happened to us? If we don't get this right now, I've got grandchildren. I don't want to see the country we're going to have 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. If we don't start acting like we got some guts, right now, brethren, sisterin, friends, colleagues, right now.
John DeBerry is a Democratic pro-life senator in the state of Tennessee. He's also a minister of the gospel for the Church of Christ. And every day he also, besides being a senator, is a minister for a church. He is a Christian, and I can see the difference. I didn't realize that when I first heard this. This has impacted me a whole lot. There's nothing I can say or do without getting myself into trouble, other than to listen to what people say, who know what's really truthful and what is not. If we take a look at the text I have today, I want to bring those up before I get any further. The text that's found in Luke 17, which I didn't mention to James, but it says, "As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be before the coming of the Son of Man." And if we look in Genesis 6, verse 5, oh, wait a second. My glasses are getting a little fogged here. All right, 6:5. "Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of the heart was only evil continually." And I wanted to, bring to attention that right now we have a whole lot of evil intentions out there. Everybody, not just one side or the other. The evil intentions are there, and it seems to be the dwelling place of most people. In Matthew 7, verse 12, I wanted these to be something that makes an impact on me as well. And it says, "Therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets." If our world were to follow the golden rule, if our country were to utilize what the Bible has to say, then there would be no rioting, there would be no destruction. When Jesus was crucified, we were told by the spirit of prophecy that there were evil angels amongst the people. And when Barabbas was brought out to them, one of the most horrifically awful criminals that you can imagine of today and then, and they wanted to say, "Who should I let free, Barabbas or Jesus?" They said, "Barabbas. What should I do with Jesus? Crucify him." The evil angels were there yelling, "Crucify him," because they thought that they could be conquering. And that's really sad. Today, when the rioting starts and the words are said, if you listen to the news reports on the communication that's happening between all of the people that are in the streets, there's more beeping, which is the way of we covering up bad words, than there is actual human talk, because all we hear is a continual beep, beep, because there's nothing but filth, and the language has gone down, and the respect for humankind is not there. For my last verse, I wanted you to, I'd say the Bible's in front of you. Matthew 12, verse 36. Matthew 12, verse 36. "But I say to you that for every idle word men may speak, they will give an account of it in the day of judgment." The tongue has been described, and I tried to find it in the Bible, but I couldn't. As a double-edged sword. I said, that would be a great text to have. So I went through and I couldn't find it. But I did find another one. Give me a second here. Reckless words pierce. This is in Proverbs 12, verse 18. Reckless words pierce like a sword. So reckless words can pierce like a sword. What are we to do today as Christians, as Seventh-day Adventist Christians? The only thing that I can come up with is to get down on our hands and our knees and pray. Pray without ceasing. Pray for the end of the misery and the hatred and the discourse that's happening in this world. Pray for the fact that Jesus is going to come back and make it all right again. And that's what I want to leave with you today. Jesus is still in control, and we can rest assured that he will be with us and he will never leave us, nor will he ever forsake us.